Hey, good evening and hi everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the Mountaineers Books web series. My name is Doug Canfield, and we're really excited this evening to have Emily Nielson give us tips for campfire cooking. Emily is a co-author of the new book, Dirty Gourmet, Food for Your Outdoor Adventures. The cookbook has more than 120 modern and delicious recipes for outdoor adventures and is divided into 3 sections. There are on-the-trail recipes, and this is food that you'd make at home and put in your pack, maybe for a day hike, for example. The guts of the book is really car camping, and there are really terrific meals that you can make when you're staging your outings from a campground. Lots of delicious stuff that, you know, if you have the gear to make them, then everybody's going to be really happy with you. And finally, there are recipes that are lightweight and long-lasting that you can put together at home and then bring in your backpack for multi-day backcountry trips. Emily's co-authors, Amy Trudeau and Mei Yan Kwan, are also her partners in their company, which is called Dirty Gourmet. Dirty Gourmet, the company, specializes in teaching outdoor cooking and authentic camp cooking for events, especially large campouts. They've been cooking at REI's Out Tessa, for example, which has hundreds of outdoor enthusiasts come together. Dirty Gourmet was also a finalist in the 2017 Camber Outdoors Pitch Fest. Finalists in that competition received mentoring and advice for their new business startups from outdoor industry veterans. Camber Outdoors was founded in 1996 as the Outdoor Industries Women's Coalition and is the only national organization dedicated to women's equality in active outdoor industries. Camber Outdoors is a sponsor of our web episode tonight, and if you found your way here through an invitation from Camber, we want to extend a warm welcome to you. If you're not familiar with this nonprofit org, you can learn more about them by visiting their website at camberoutdoors.org. Okay, this evening, Emily is going to share with us meals you can cook right in a campfire using cooking gear like aluminum foil pouches and a Dutch oven. Most of us have had the experience, of course, of roasting a hot dog over the fire or marshmallows, but imagine how impressed your family and friends will be when you pull cornbread chili pie out of the fire, or dish up some smoky sausage and white bean stew after a long day of playing outdoors, hiking, and such. So anyway, let's get started with the presentation. Welcome, Emily. I'm handing the presentation over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Doug. And yes, thank you, Camber Outdoors, for sponsoring. So I am one of 3 co-founders of Dirty Gourmet, and we are the whole company. I'm the one here in the middle, Emily. Amy is on the left and Mayan on the right. Amy and I are cousins. And we started our blog in 2010, right after Amy and Mayan had gotten back from a bike tour across Canada. So we realized during that summer that they rode from Los Angeles up to Vancouver and all the way across to Montreal, and had planned to stay in some hotels, but I think they only stayed in a hotel 2 nights out of the entire summer. So by the end of that, we realized together that there was not very many resources available for good food in the outdoors. And some people need really good food that is not only nourishing, but something you're going to be looking forward to eating by the end of your exhausting day outdoors. At that same time, I had been working at an outdoor science school. I taught 6th graders in the woods for 3 years. And I had spent my entire childhood in the outdoors as well. Amy and our family used to meet up to go camping as children. This is me in a snow cave when I was a year old. So we've been in the outdoors our whole life, and at this point, I had never wanted to see another instant packet of oatmeal or hot dog on a stick again. So we realized it was time to kind of pool our resources and create a resource for others to share. And after that, it started just as a blog again, and it was really fun, but we started getting some really awesome opportunities. We were able to contribute some great content to other companies, websites. We were catalog models at one point, and then we started working on cooking for these events. And that's where the need has really become strong, and we've really moved our business into the direction of events and teaching workshops. there are a lot of companies out there that are trying to produce outdoor events to gather new people, to convince them to go outside and try new things, but they're not able to find a food solution because there's just not a lot of people who are able to cook in that sort of environment. And so we've been really plugging ourselves in and making it an authentic part of the outdoor experience for those events, which has been really fun for us. But we've always wanted to do a cookbook, and so this is really exciting that we are finally able to have produced our first cookbook, and also to have done so with a really great partner such as Mountaineers Books. Their company is in line with ours in terms of our mission and really focusing on stewardship and getting new people outdoors so that they are interested in being out there for the right reasons and hopefully protecting the environment. So it's been really fun, and then also to be able to create a book that includes all types of camping, because we do everything. We love to backpack, we love to go on day trips, rock climbing, and we also love to have those glamorous glamping experiences for our giant families to enjoy. So we wanted a book that was going to incorporate everything. So that's what we've built here. So, but to start from the beginning, why go outside? For most of us, it's a reason to sort of unplug and get away from all the clutter of our daily lives and really focus on survival and what it means to be, really focused on the basics and nothing more. And there's a key piece of survival is food, and that is something that is really important, and it could make or break your trip. So if you don't have the right number of calories, you may not make it as far into the backcountry that you want. But also, if you don't have something that you're excited to eat, you're probably not going to eat enough calories to make it into the backcountry anyway. So having that balance of comfort and survival plugged into food is really important. But most of the time, we've noticed that when people are planning their adventures, they do all this planning for every other detail, and then food is just kind of tacked on as an afterthought. And they run out to the grocery store on the way out of town and pick up something basic that they think of as camp food and head out. And we want to change that mindset. We want food to be just as much a part of the outdoor experience as every other piece. So there are definitely, so first of all, the book is broken down again into those 3 different categories. The on the trail recipes are recipes that are made at home mostly, and they don't require any cooking or a lot of setup in the middle of your trail. That's something you're going to eat just real quick on the fly while you're doing your activities, and something that can last in a backpack. Then the car camping recipes are going to be similar to cooking at home a lot of times. You do have access to things like a cooler, maybe in a car with lots of space. And then backcountry, we did not call backpacking because we know you possibly are out on a kayak or on a horse, but that's something where you have more perishability issues, weight, and space. So the considerations do change depending on the different types of trip you're taking, the gear that you have. Maybe you get stuck in a surprise snowstorm and you've got to consider that. But I did want to just quickly talk about the real basic needs that and the differentiator of outdoor cooking versus cooking in your kitchen. So again, perishability, that is something that you really need to focus on, even if you're in a car camping scenario and have access to coolers. You may not have a lot of space in those coolers, and so making sure that you're bringing the appropriate quantities that will fit in there, not too much so you don't have a lot of leftovers to figure out how to store, but also not too little so that you get enough food, especially if you're doing activities during the day that are going to exhaust you. And then weight and space and volume all kind of go together. Definitely, if you're thinking about putting your food into a backpack, that's one thing. But even in your car, we've had many times where we've found some really squished bananas in the bottom of our little car camping bin in the back of the car because we weren't really thinking about how much space we needed for food. So thinking about that. And then also durability is another thing. Just that banana example is a perfect one for that. So picking something a little sturdier, maybe some apples or something that could stand being squished into the corner of a bin is a good idea. All right. And then, but today we're going to be focusing on campfire cooking specifically. So that's In our book, it's a subset of the car camping type of cooking because we are dealing with some heavy duty equipment a lot of the times. It is possible that you would be able to cook in a backcountry scenario in the campfire. So if you're lucky enough to find a campfire where you can do that, then we'll give you some tips and tricks to be able to execute that even in a lightweight scenario. But this is the most iconic type of camp cooking, and it's our favorite because of that. We know that even if you're a backpacker or somebody who doesn't camp often, you're interested in campfire cooking. It's something that really does make you feel like you're out there. And the other nice thing about it is that a lot of times, especially in a car camping scenario, there's somebody who's stuck being the cook and they are pushed away to the side, at the picnic table with their propane stove, freezing while everybody else gets to sit around the campfire and chat and hang out together and stay warm. And so if you're using the campfire to cook, you're able to bring everybody together and make it an even deeper bonding experience. So everybody gets to stay warm and be a part of that kind of party atmosphere. But also, you're able to bring people in and make the cooking aspect something that everybody can do together, which can be really fun. So we really appreciate, we go out there also to bond with the people that we're camping with, and having that access is great. So, and then you can do so much with the campfire. We're not just talking about one type of recipe. You can make a little twist like this blueberry baked oatmeal. This is just kind of a twist on your classic oatmeal that is so much better. Or you can go full on exotic like this Korean style bibimbap, which is a rice dish with basically a salad of vegetables all on top. And you mix it all together with this delicious kind of spicy sweet sauce. And as it sits on the campfire, it gets crispier and crispier on the bottom, and that's the best part, is that crispy rice on the bottom. But to cook on a campfire, you need to start with the basics. So the basics of cooking on a campfire is starting the fire. And you may know this already, but we'll go through kind of your basic steps. There are 3 basic components for cooking on a campfire. Tinder is your smallest, lightest weight stuff that's going to catch fire very easily, but it's not going to hold a flame for very long. And then there's kindling, and kindling is sticks usually that are somewhere ranging between about the size of a pencil to about the size of maybe your arm. And those are going to catch somewhat easily once the tinder is lit, but they're also going to help you build up heat because they're going to hold the flame for a little bit longer. So they're going to build up more heat and allow for the actual fuel logs, the firewood, to catch, and that is what you're going to have your actual fire come out of. And the firewood is usually broken down into 2 basic categories. We've got softer woods and then hardwoods. And if you're talking about cooking creating a cooking fire, you do want to make sure that you are using some hardwoods. Sometimes I'll do a mix because softwoods catch fire more easily, but they usually kind of create a little more ash and not so much those nice thick embers that we're looking for. So I will always bring a couple pieces of hardwoods at least for that, because especially if you're talking about Dutch oven baking, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then from there, you need to talk about the structure. So most people I know subscribe to the method of taking some pieces of paper, a few leaves, maybe some cardboard, throwing it in a pile, and using about 100 matches to eventually get a fire lit. Now, this is a great method if you are looking for some entertainment for one of your guests that's annoying you while you're trying to build dinner, but not your most efficient option if you are actually going to be using your fire for cooking. You are going to need about 45 minutes or so to build up those embers in your most efficient scenario. So that's going to add about an hour to that experience. So if you're sitting around camp, that's fine. But if you're out hiking all day and want to plan dinner using the campfire, you want to make sure that you're using a little bit more efficient option. Another option that's really popular is the teepee style, and that's usually another method that I see a lot. The problem with the teepee style is it's really hard to get it all properly set up so that it's not going to collapse in on itself. And once it starts catching fire, it will eventually collapse in on itself most of the time. The problem with that is you are looking for an air column to go through the center and allow some oxygen to build that fire up. and it's really hard to keep and maintain that air column with a teepee, and at least how I found. So the log cabin structure is my preferred method, and it's just like this picture here. You're going to gather first all of your tinder, all of your kindling, and your firewood and have them all close by, and then spend the time to build the structure ahead of time. Don't catch it on fire until your structure is actually built. So grab a big pile of your tinder, pile it up in the middle, and then build your log cabin structure out of the kindling around it. The other nice thing about the log cabin is you're going to have little spaces in between your kindling pieces, so you can actually stick a match, like one of those matchstick lighters, the long ones, straight through there, light your tinder on fire. You should be able to do it with one match and walk away and be a complete hero in your campsite. So if you want to be really impressive, this is definitely a great way to do it. And then once the kindling catches fire, go ahead and start putting your firewood on top. That you don't need to stick with that log cabin structure perfectly, but make sure that you keep that air column kind of through the middle. And then you're going to let it set again for about 45 minutes until you have the embers, if you're talking about cooking in a Dutch oven. But again, there are lots of different ways to use the fire. So this picture kind of is a nice one to showcase multiple ways to use your fire, and we're going to talk about each one of them. And the other thing I just wanted to point out with this picture is I've had people ask me before, what is a grate when we're talking about cooking over the grate of a campfire, or what does a campfire ring look like in an established campground? This is a pretty typical one. They do look different everywhere you go, but your basic components are here. So you've got a metal ring, possibly it's going to be just made of rocks, but some sort of fireproof ring, and then this grate that's over top of only half of the fire ring. So that we'll talk about in just a second, but this is what we're talking about when we're talking about an established campfire ring. If you're lucky enough to live somewhere where you can build your own, you want to build something that looks similar to this. And yes, you can buy a grate that will go over your campfire, and it should go over just half of it, just like this. So the grate is a great way of cooking. I like to use the grate for appetizers or for things if I need something really quick, because you can cook over the grate right away once you have a big fire going and not having to wait for those embers. Basically, it's kind of the same as cooking on your home stovetop, and you have the ability to manipulate your heat just by moving your fire under that grate or away. And that's why it only goes over half of the fire pit, so that you can scoot your wood away if you want to cool it down, and you can scoot more under if you want to heat it up. So in this picture, we're roasting some fresh corn right directly on that grate under the fire. And this is something that you could cook up pretty quickly while you're still working on getting the rest of the elements of dinner prepared. Another way you can use your grate is to do it with a foil pouch. And this is another popular method, especially for people who are just starting out and not really interested in investing too much money in equipment. You can just buy some foil. It's very easy cleanup, but most people that I know who use foil pouches often just throw some food inside, ball it up, toss it in the fire, and that makes it very difficult for you to do any sort of manipulation to that food when it's time to check on it. We have a really nice foil pouch tutorial that's a photo tutorial in our book to show you every piece of the process. But just in general, the goal is use a lot more foil than you would expect to use, because you want to have space around the food in order to allow your food to steam inside of that packet. And you're going to want to use foods that can handle a little bit of char and that don't need a lot of manipulation, so a lot of stirring. So I wouldn't do like a noodle dish in a foil pouch. These peppers here are in our cookbook. There's a recipe for, it's a goat cheese herb stuffed roasted little mini peppers, and it's actually a variation of the very first recipe that we posted on our blog. And so it's very simple. Again, make a really nice pouch that's folded, not scrunched, so that you could potentially get in there and check on the doneness once or twice, and then you could shake it up or maybe flip it, but again, you don't want to have to stir too much. So this is great, and this can go directly on your grate or even right in your fire if you're a little bit careful. I prefer to put it on the grate. And then the other thing, oh, and this is a nice recipe that we've cooked in. This is actually directly on the embers, but it's an ember roasted baba ganoush. So we roasted the eggplant directly on the fire. So this is a really delicious thing, super easy. That eggplant just kind of squishes all down and turns into the baba ganoush, and then you just add your seasonings and you're good to go. And very impressive looking if you've got a party of people to entertain. The last thing I was going to mention about cooking over the grate is that you can use a skillet, a cast iron skillet, and this is one of our favorite tools that we'll get into. This is a black bean skillet fried tacos. That's really simple and really delicious right on the grate. You want to use a really hot fire for this one. So some benefits about cast iron. Cast iron is something that I use even at home at this point because I'm so impressed with what it can do for you. But basically it's a very heavy metal and it's a little bit porous. And so over time, if you maintain this well, you can create a really perfect non-stick surface. That's a very easy cleanup, which is always a plus when we're talking about camping. And it's heavy enough that it can handle the high temperatures of throwing it right in the fire. And it can also, it's very even heating, so you're not going to have as many issues burning and charring your food as you would directly on the grate or in your foil pouch. So we've got a skillet here, and we've got a Dutch oven here, and we'll talk about all the different types of cast iron. Also, it's pretty inexpensive, and really, if you're lucky enough to have like a grandma who's got it in her basement, then you could go grab an old rusty piece of cast iron, season it up, it's a little involved, but once it's seasoned, it's good to go right away once again. All right, so one more note about cast iron. The most specific type tool that we use here is called the pie iron, and you may or may not have heard of these. There's a couple other words for them, but it's a pretty old school tool. And we actually received our first pie iron for Mayanne and I both got one for Christmas one year from Amy. And we looked at her and smiled politely and set it aside thinking we would never touch it again because it seemed like such a one-use wonder. But eventually I realized what it is basically a hot pocketer machine for an individual serving. And the possibilities are endless. This thing is the best. So the nice thing about a pie iron is that one thing we're talking about when we're talking about campfire cooking is a lot of trial and error. We're not really getting super scientific about our heat levels and our timing. We're going to be checking our food a lot. And so if you're new to campfire cooking especially, it's pretty easy to go a little overboard and maybe burn something. So if you're using a pie iron, you're only going to burn one portion at a time. So then you can kind of correct for your next round, which is really nice. So we love that. The other nice thing is nowadays, especially, we're dealing with a lot of different food dietary distinctions and needs within our group even. Vegetarians, vegans, gluten-free, we've got people with different allergies, and then just people with different preferences in general. And so being able to cook on an individual level like this is great. So this chili grilled cheese, for instance, is a really great recipe, but if you've got somebody in your crew that doesn't eat cheese, you could swap it out with a vegan alternative, or doesn't want chili because it's too spicy, go ahead and remove that, no problem. And so you can really customize to your group's needs with this tool. So we love it. The other nice thing is you can make desserts, you can fry an egg in there. Again, possibilities are endless. So said enough about pie irons here. And then we'll talk about now the quintessential tool, which is the Dutch oven. So there's a lot of people that own Dutch ovens, but they are often a little intimidated to try to use them because they may have seen those professional Dutch oven chefs who are making amazing things and doing awesome like cook-off competitions. And you can absolutely do that. But again, when we're talking about the campfire, we're talking more trial and error, and we're talking a lot more about estimation. And if you ever burn anything in a Dutch oven, you just pull off the lid and you tell everybody it's rustic, and that will fix everything. Everybody will be super impressed because that's what they're looking for, is some rustic campfire cooking. So don't even worry if you burn a little bit of the edges. But let's talk about some different types of Dutch ovens that you may have seen. So we've got three major kinds right here. The first one on the left is the one that we are generally talking about when we're talking about Dutch oven cooking in the campfire. This one is built to hold charcoals. So it's got that flanged lid, it's called, which is just a lip on the lid, and then the little feet on the bottom. And those are both features to allow it to sit in charcoal and then have charcoals piled on top. The one in the center is also campfire style, but this is a crock, so this is more for using on the grate or even on your propane stove. But it's still that black heavy bottomed material, so it's totally fine if it gets sooty. And it's got a domed lid, so you're going to get a little more steaming action on this one. Still got that really long handle as well, which makes it easier to pull away from the flames. And then the one on the right is your enamel Dutch oven, and that one is generally made for home. I've had lots of people ask if we could use that in the campfire. It could probably handle the heat, but again, you don't have that handle to be able to manipulate it very well in the fire, and it probably will get all black and sooty. And for something as fancy as this, generally I don't recommend getting it all black and sooty. So we're going to be talking about the one on the left. All right, so the most basic information about Dutch oven cooking is that if you're trying to bake, you're going for even heating throughout the entire Dutch oven, and heat rises. And so in order to get that even heating, you're actually going to want more heat on top of your Dutch oven than on the bottom. So you're going to use generally about the 2/3 rule with your charcoals. And when we're talking about this baking chart that I have up here and charcoal in general, we're talking about those uniform charcoal briquettes that you get in a bag of charcoal that you buy at the grocery store. That's what the professional chefs are using to get these specific temperatures. So I'll explain how it works with those, and then we'll talk about the actual campfire. So this chart right here, we just have a sample, but it's for the 8-inch Dutch oven. That's the diameter. Most people do own more like a 10 or a 12-inch Dutch oven, but they go anywhere from 8 all the way up to, we have a couple 16-inch Dutch ovens, really large. So we're looking at the 8-inch Dutch oven here, and let's say we want to make it a 400-degree oven. You're going to scooch over onto the total, and it says 18 charcoals total, uniform briquettes. And so 12 of those are going to go on the lid, and 6 of them are going to go underneath. And that's going to get you that 400 degrees in a perfect setting. Now, when we're dealing with the campfire, though, you've got embers that are not exactly the size of those charcoal briquettes, so we just estimate. If we look at a piece of charcoal that looks like it's maybe three briquettes worth, we're just going to call it 3. And usually I'll put the bigger ones on top and the smaller ones on bottom. Occasionally, we'll avoid putting any charcoal on the bottom at all, because when in doubt, just put more heat on the top. The other thing to think about is you could actually reduce that number a little bit, because you possibly, in our case, most of the time we have a campfire going on the side, so we'll scoot the campfire way over to one side where people are sitting to keep warm and try to give ourselves some space without the fire and just with those coals on the other side of the fire pit. But that fire will give you a little extra residual heat from the side, so you don't want to turn your Dutch oven. So the general rule of thumb for turning your Dutch oven is you want to do it half a turn for the whole oven one direction, and then a quarter turn for the lid the other direction at every 15 minutes or so. And that gives you a chance to kind of check in. And then you get to make these delicious recipes. So cornbread chili pie is something that Doug mentioned. This is a picture of it. And you can see it's not perfectly beautiful, but it is so delicious. This is a great example of one that you would want to do mainly coals on top and not worry so much about charcoal on the bottom, because you're just got chili on the bottom, so that's really kind of just heating through, and the baking is happening with the cornbread all on top. So you can just throw your charcoals on top there. And then another real nice classic option here, sticky buns. This is process pictures here, and you can see we did get a little rustic there, but that didn't stop anybody from inhaling every last bite, so no problem there. This is when you do want to be a little more finicky with your heating, though. And then got a couple more recipes just to share with you here. So spiced nuts is a perfect recipe for that appetizer when you're trying to quickly get something out for people. And we wanted to talk a little bit about how to make your food not just regular camp food, but really truly gourmet while you're out there. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're camping, it is so easy to impress people with just one special element. So don't go overboard in the planning and trying to add too many techniques. The elegance is in simplifying and really focusing on that one key ingredient that can impress people. So in this case, the shallot that we put in here is the key ingredient. It's not just nuts, but it's usually a crisped up, caramelized couple of shallots mixed in there that add just a little bit of interest, freshness, and a lot of flavor. And then the spice mix is really delicious too. And this recipe is perfect for, again, heat it up, make it on your campfire, and just leave it on the grate for the rest of the evening. And people can just kind of pick at it, and it'll stay warm and delicious right there, no problem. So here's a recipe for you. And this, again, is in the book. And then, of course, we wanted to share with you a dessert and mention one other option here. This is a skillet apple pie, and so not in a Dutch oven, and this was done on the grate of the campfire. Really simple, easy dessert. Again, a little rustic, but we just covered that rusticness up with some cognac butter and fixed all our problems. This one has just a crust on the top, not on the bottom, so it's really just apples on the bottom, which adds a lot of moisture so that you don't have as much burning issues to deal with. And we did end up putting coals on the top to bake that crust, so we put our Dutch oven lid on top of a skillet. You can buy a lid for your skillet, or you could even just use some aluminum foil, use some heavy-duty aluminum foil, and throw some charcoals on top, and it'll do just fine. And then we're using the heat from underneath the grate for the bottom half. So another really simple recipe using whatever tools you have. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy every single one of these tools to make what you want to make. And just one more little note about cleanup. Cleanup is not the most fun subject, but it is definitely an essential piece of camp cooking. And as you can see here, we understand how terrible dishes can be out there. So we wanted to give you some tips to make it less terrible on you. Biggest thing is plan the proper portions. If you make way too much food and you have a bunch of extra dishes that you need to clean because you're dealing with leftovers, it's so much less fun. So try your hardest to kind of pre-measure any ingredients, throw them into a Ziploc baggie beforehand so you don't have huge pots of marinara sauce like we have here. This is from actually a large event, but buying a scraper tool is really great. This little chain wheel that we have listed here is perfect for cast iron, especially getting a little stuck on bits. And then there are other types of scraper tools that can work for other types of materials to just get all that food into the trash, because once it gets into the water, it's really difficult to remove, and you don't want to scatter scraps of food around your campsite right before you go to bed. If you don't clean that up, the raccoons will, so you don't want them helping. And then our biggest secret weapon here is to definitely heat up the water for washing dishes. This is going to make you easily get yourself a helper. You just tell them it's a jacuzzi for their hands, and it's absolutely worth it on a cold night when you're exhausted from hiking all day and then cooking all evening. Heat up that water. Make sure you have enough fuel, or you can just throw your skillet or your Dutch oven on the campfire with water in it, and it'll heat it up, and that'll actually do double duty because that's going to help you clean out those last little stuck on bits. So, and just make sure that you're really thinking about stewardship when you're in your campsite. I've seen people decide to throw some food into the campfire thinking it'll burn, but then they put their fire out 5 minutes later, and I've watched a squirrel like walk across hot coals in order to get to the corn cob that he found in there or something. We don't want to do that to the wildlife. We want to be out there to experience it. And also those wildlife are going to probably come back bringing their bigger, scarier, more dangerous friends later on if you leave them too many goodies. So make sure that cleanup is a big part of your experience. All right, and we just wanted to say thank you once again. Our goal is to get people to feel confident about making food that's going to work for you in your camp experience. And so hopefully you found some great tips during this webinar, and you'll find many more in our book. And then all of our recipes are meant to be adaptable so that you can add a different ingredient here, reduce a different ingredient there, adjust to your heart's content to make the food your own. We don't want people to feel like they're stuck within the foods that exist for them in camp environments. You can do whatever you want. And so if you like our recipes as much as we think you will, please do help us spread the word and talk about our new book, and hopefully you love it. Give us some Amazon reviews if you have the ability to do that. And we just really appreciate you spending the time with us. Also, we will be at UCLA tomorrow doing a book signing and another little presentation, and we're actually sampling those spiced nuts tomorrow. So if anybody's in the area and wants to come by, we'd love to see you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, samples. That made me really good and hungry. So anyway, we have a few questions. Terrence asks, Emily, when you cook directly on the grill, do you clean it first and the grate, and how do you clean it? What would you use? What's your advice?
Great question. So yes, I do. Remember that the grill is being heated up, so you don't have to worry too much, but a nice way to do it, especially if you don't have tools specific for cooking on the grill, which I always forget, I will bring a pair of really long tongs, which I highly recommend in general to have if you're a campfire cook, and then ball up some aluminum foil and use your tongs to just hold that aluminum foil and scrape off the grill that way. If you're concerned, you can always line the grill with aluminum foil together.
Jim asks, he asks about your chart with the different temperatures and such, and pot sizes. And he asks, did you science that chart? And then he says, oh, maybe perhaps that's just estimates.
So that chart is a chart that we borrowed from someone else who scienced it. So yes, it is. That is pretty specific. But again, when we use it, we're using it pretty estimatedly. Okay. So there's a chart available in our book. They're also available all over the internet.
Caitlin asks, I've never seasoned my own cast iron. What is your preferred method?
So it is a very involved process. My preferred method is to buy a pre-seasoned cast iron and just maintain it. Do a really good job of keeping it clean. But the official best method is to use flaxseed oil, which is related to like linseed. So it's really hard oil and it'll really create a patina. You're supposed to start with oven cleaner, totally get it back to 0, and then do layer after layer of this flaxseed oil, put it in your oven at a really low temperature for a few hours at a time, and then add another layer of oil and do it again and again for, I think, 5 rounds. So ideally, you don't have to do that, but.
Okay. Lucy asks, do you have suggestions for types of food to take on a 9-day canoe trip? We won't have refrigeration much past the first couple days.
Yeah, there are some great recipes in our book we do have a lot of freeze-dried ingredients, but some of our favorite fresh ingredients that last are things like citrus, so lemons and limes, add a lot of zing to just a standard freeze-dried recipe. And then an avocado is great if you can get some really hard avocados and have them ripen over time. Those are another really fun one. Also, garlic and shallots, again, are great. If you don't have them pre-cut, then they won't smell and bring critters until you actually are ready to use them. So I think those are all things that I would bring and just add them to a standard sort of freeze-dried idea of a meal. My favorite freeze-dried ingredient is dehydrated bean flakes, which are like instant mashed potatoes, but beans, so you get a lot of protein in them, and you can add them to everything.
Jim asks, can you tell us your top 3 can't live without utensils? And then he has a follow-up as well, which is, do you use oven gloves with your Dutch oven?
So if we're talking campfire specific, oven gloves are definitely top. Those long tongs, so like 20 inches, I think you can get long tongs. And then the little chainmail scraper tool, probably those.
Okay. Let's see. Jason asked, I see there are lots of models of pie irons. Any features to avoid or make sure that you have in a pie iron? And how long do they last?
Pie irons can last for eternity if you take care of them. They're cast iron as well. There are, you're right, so many different shapes and sizes. We have a waffle one. There's some that are shapes like hot dogs. So they're all fun. They're about 20 bucks a piece. So if you want, buy a couple. That's what I recommend. And then everybody can have sort of a cook-offs, making different things in their fire. But I generally, I have one right next to me. This is the double. And this thing is great for making a little bit larger portions. The standard ones are half of this, and it's just a square or a circle. That's the one I would recommend. That's got the most versatility.
Lucy wants to know, where do you get those dehydrated bean flakes?
There's a company called Honeyville Farms, which you can go online and find them. And you can buy giant cans of them there. I have also found smaller portions just at Whole Foods, or starting to see more freeze-dried ingredients in regular grocery stores.
Okay. Let's see. Lori says, what is one of your favorite recipes?
That bibimbap is worth everybody making. That is one of our favorite recipes. The crispy rice just is so good. And the fact that it's really just a salad on top, you can use any vegetable you like and throw it all together really quickly. So really low maintenance, easy to do. Obviously, we like it. We put it on the cover of the book.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, that pretty much, I don't know if does anybody else have any questions, or should we let Emily go? The book, Lori also asked, when is the book available? And the book is available. I'm glad you asked that. It's available now and wherever books are sold. You can also get it on the Mountaineers Books website, which is mountaineersbooks.org. Marissa, our helper here, has given you in the chat box, you guys, a link to that. And on that page on our website, there's a download of for 3 recipes from the book. So you can sample out some of their fantastic recipes. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you? Oh yeah, and if you use this code on our website, Gourmet, Gourmet, you can get 20% off on our when you order it from Mountaineers Books directly. Again, the code is Gourmet, but don't stress if you don't have a pencil or pen. We're going to email everybody a recording of this event or this episode in a day or two, and we'll send you that link again. We'll send you the link, we'll send you the code. Let's see. So that is about it. We do web events. Mountaineers Books does web events every month, and our next one will be on May 15th, and that's going to be about family outings with the authors of our Adventuring with Kids book series. Most of the it's a relatively new series, but most of the books are centered around what to do, family outings and ideas and games and such that you can do in particular national parks. So you're always welcome, of course, to register for an event, even if you can't make it on that evening, and then we'll email you a recording afterward. So that about wraps it up for us. Thank you so much, Emily. I really enjoyed it. I thought everything was so pretty. I'm hoping I can go to one of your events and get the samples.
We would love that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Well, I hope to see you next month. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.